Welcome, everyone, to the Unintelligent Movie Reviews, where we don't take ourselves too seriously and neither should you. Hi, I'm Misunderstood.
And I'm Condrylian, and today we are going to be covering the 1993 Western movie Tombstone, which covers the brothers Wyatt, Virgil, and Morgan Earp in their attempts to retire from law enforcement to the sleepy mining town of Tombstone, Arizona, where they can go into business for themselves. And instead, they find themselves embroiled in a gang war with a violent group of outlaws known as the Cowboys.
And please wait to the end to answer the question. Is Tombstone highly overrated? I'd like to start off with the introduction of my favorite character, which is Wyatt Earp when he arrives on the train. I find that scene, they did an amazing job. They hit it right on, in my opinion. They show him coming off the train, but they start off with his boot and they kind of go up and show his whole body, show the stature of this man. And I found that amazing because it shows like what a cowboy would probably look like. What was your favorite character? Or
my
introduction, excuse me, introduction of your favorite character.
my favorite character introduction was Doc's, specifically because all of the other characters, when they're introduced, we see them kind of at their best. Like we get to see, like in the case of Wyatt, we see him stand up for something and then be joyous, have his joyous reunion with his brothers. But in the case of um, Doc Holliday's character, instead of him being at his best, we actually see him at his worst. He's in the middle of drowning himself in alcohol, smoking up a storm, gambling, and he straight up murks a guy in a hotel, and then robs the place, including people that were uninvolved, and they make off with everything. And from there, his character has to be built up to not be built up, but shown improvements, like the fact that yeah, he's a like he could be a horrible man, but he was actually a very loyal friend with maybe no other redeeming qualities other than the fact that he's a very loyal friend. But that loyal friendship is kind of the focal point of not the whole movie, but parts of the a good portion of the movie.
I agree. I agree. It definitely was. Yeah, I love Doc Holliday, so I can agree with that as well. Definitely. So after that, I think the next interesting part of the movie was when Wyatt Earp is outside and he's standing out there with I believe it was his two brothers, and he was talking with the sheriff or marshal. I'm not sure which one it was. Do you
I think it's
remember?
Marshall.
Marshall. The marshal. Um, and we'll get back into that because the marshal, he was a marshal but didn't really do much. But they were out there talking, and Wyatt Earp noticed the saloon the across from where they were standing was kind of not much going on. So he goes inside the saloon and he talks to the guy behind the bar, and he asked, why is it so dead in here? And he mentioned that it was his bar. He owned it. And he said, well, you see that guy over there? And there was a man over in the corner, and they were playing poker or something like that. And he was talking horrible to everybody that was sitting around him, being rude, nasty and everything. And he says, well, since that guy came in, he ran everybody out. So, nobody comes here anymore. Pretty much is what he said. So Wyatt kind of like just gets this look on his face. He walks over to him and he pretty much tells him, um, you're kind of like you're in my seat, because he looks up at him and he's like, what are you looking at? He thinks he's a tough guy. And he says, well, you're in my seat. And he's like, he's trying to talk, trash to him, to Wyatt, not knowing who he was. And, saying, oh, you're a big talker for someone that doesn't, carry a gun, pretty much is what he was saying. So when Wyatt started saying more things to him, you could see him getting scared, like his face, which I found Billy Bob Thornton, he did an amazing job because he did look like he was afraid. And
Mm-hmm.
so then Wyatt takes him by the ear, pretty much takes him by the ear and throws him out of the bar. And then he had taken his gun away, and he throws the gun to the bartender that owns the place and says, what's it say? But 20% sound good? Something like that. That was probably one of my second favorite parts of the movie because it shows that he was a tough guy. He was not afraid of anything. he didn't carry a gun. I mean, like, for all he knew, the guy could shoot him. He wasn't afraid whatsoever. So it really showed his character really well. So both of those characters were amazing. So that was really interesting to me.
Carrying on from that, kind of a good scene, um, or an important scene is the one that follows it. Right after Wyatt comes out and goes, "Yeah, like we're going into business. I got us a cut in the Oriental." He's talking to his brothers. Um, Doc shows up, coincidentally saving them from Billy Bob Thornton's, revenge attempt, because apparently Doc knew the kid, um, and um, he it's kind of an odd reunion. It's the kind of thing you don't see in a movie these days, where the characters clearly know each other, haven't seen each other in a while, and they're just talking. Not about anything in particular. It's the kind of thing you'd see in something like Casablanca or okay, I thought you were frozen for a second. I know I've seen it in other things, but it's not something you would see in a modern movie typically anymore. Um, but aside from the reunion between Doc and the brothers, we're also introduced to the overall politics of the town because we get to see that a gunfight that introduces two minor characters that are kind of important later on, and they're introduced so early, which is kind of a good kind of a Chekhov's gun kind of thing. But we're also shown that the marshal, it's not that he doesn't do anything; it's that he can't do anything. Everyone respects him. Even Curly Bill, the leader of the Cowboys, respects the marshal, but he respects him kind of in the like, oh, I respect your position. You're not, you like you'll let us get away with everything. Like kind of respected him like an elder, not really as anything like his actual position. And then the sheriff is on the anti-Chinese League Commission and the town lot commission. Like he's double dipping in everything. So clearly he's not law enforcement either. Um, and that kind of sets the stage for everything going forward, except for one point. And that one point, I believe, is your favorite character of all time in any movie ever.
Okay, so we will talk about what you mentioned. Um, there is a character that arrives on the in the movie, and her name is Josephine. She is actually Wyatt Earp's love interest in the movie. She shows up with also a gentleman. They both were theater people. And so he show up on the stagecoach. And when they show up, Wyatt Earp was in the distance talking with his brothers and everything. And he's just standing there. And she noticed him. And they showed her, you know, looking at him and saying, to the gentleman, I want one, pretty much. Um,
Happy
she's
hunting.
not my favorite character, but that's what started. The next scene was her showing up with the other gentleman for the theater.
It continues whenever they go to the theater, and we get to see Wyatt's reciprocating this. I want one more quietly, less obviously, but still reciprocating, and the declining interest in his common law wife. Although we don't know that they're common law in the movie, that's a real life bit of meta right there.
Right.
Um,
Well, and that's because she was drinking cough medicine, but it had a lot of liquor in it back then.
Opium.
Opium is correct. Oh, opium. Okay, not liquor. And so she was getting an addiction, and so the relationship was pretty much not doing so great. Um, Correct. So when he seen her, they both had eyes for each other. It was kind of like a love at first sight. So that's definitely was true. Definitely was true. Okay, so the next thing that happened in the movie that was amazing is a scene in the Oriental Saloon. He was gambling, and there was a card game going on, and where Wyatt Earp was sitting. And at this point, Johnny Ringo pulls out his guns, and everybody starts getting nervous, but he starts like doing these little movements and maneuvers with his gun, really, really fancy, trolling them, this, that, and everybody's looking and they're woo yelling and hee-hooing and all that kind of stuff. And so, everybody's kind of like on edge. Oh my gosh, is he gonna shoot him? And Doc proceeds to take out his cup. He was drinking in this little teeny little cup. He takes out the cup and he starts copying him, doing the maneuver, this and that. And it was like to the T of what Johnny Ringo did with his gun. And it was amazing. So after that, pretty much Curly Bill kind of laughed and Johnny Ringo kind of like looked at him, okay, fine, I'll let that go. And they kind of walked away and everybody's just thinking it was funny. So that to me was a really fun part of the movie because I'm telling you, Val Kilmer is probably one of the best actors I've ever seen, in my opinion. It was amazing.
And how much effort they went to be able to do those maneuvers themselves, because we actually see some of them, like not like where it's just close up on the gun or close up on the cup. We actually see them making the motions. So
I agree. I
like that,
agree.
yeah. And Michael Bean
Yeah.
did a does a really good job interacting with Doc. It's great. No, it's a great de-escalation scene. The scene right afterwards is it's awful. We're not going to talk about it. We're just going to glide right on past that awful scene, and to the next big scene, which would be Curly Bill, the leader of the Cowboys. He's high on opium. There's an opium den right outside of town. I mean, he did mention, the sheriff did mention the anti-Chinese defamation league. But he comes from the opium den, high as a kite, starts trying to shoot at the full moon, shoot at random nonsense. Fred White is kind of forced to go out by Sheriff Behan, and he confronts Curly Bill, and it seems like it's going okay because, like I said before, Curly Bill does respect Fred White kind of as his elder, not actually as the marshal, but as his elder. And he does start handing over the gun to Fred, and then shoots him in like the most awkward position. And the movie kind of makes it look like it's intentional, but it could have been accidental from the movie's perspective. Real life, I don't think Fred White even existed, but in the movie, it's great. It's a great scene. And Wyatt comes out, beans him on the head, and prevents the town from lynching him, thereby also saving Curly Bill's life.
Right.
But the Cowboys don't remember that part. The Cowboys are more concerned with the fact that Wyatt holds a gun on them and prevents them from also taking Curly away from them,
Correct.
because Wyatt insists on taking him to jail where he can be tried for his crimes, which gets rubber stamped away by a corrupt judge. Nothing has changed in 100 years, apparently.
Okay, so now I'm going to talk about one of my least favorite scenes of the movie. Wyatt Earp decides to go out for a run on his horse, and he's out and about, and he runs into Josephine, his love interest. She's on a horse as well. So they have this long drawn out scene where the horses end up like apparently were in heat or something. So she's like, "Oh, let's run them out." So they start, showing them riding the horses in the distance and stuff. And then it shows them sitting under a tree and talking. And she's pretty much explaining the type of person she is. And he just is smitten by her. And so it's just showing how they're interested in each other and how they both, were spitting with each other. So that was one of my least favorite because it kind of was drawn out and took forever, but it is an important part of the movie. So how they end up being together in the end and stuff. So, yeah, least favorite part of the movie for sure.
It was mine too.
Mm.
I remember fast forwarding through it as a kid every time we'd watch it. It's like, I don't care. It's the love interest. It's not
I think,
important.
yeah, I think they could have shortened it a little bit. I think it was a little bit too long. That's why, just a little, they could have put a little bit in there, but they just went on and on and on. I was like, I'm over it already. So that was, yeah,
I think it's the horse riding scene that goes on for too long. Like
that's what
as
I'm,
like
yeah.
as a kid, I didn't like like as a kid I hated the whole sequence,
Hmm.
but the horse riding scene is almost superfluous, other than the fact that that's how they kind of came across each other. So you could have showed them riding off, and then like their horses being tired, and them having their rest where they had their
Correct.
discussion.
Yeah.
Which I'd like to point out, this is the only time that Doc, or that not Doc, Wyatt laughs, aside from when he first sees his brothers. This is the only scene in the movie where he laughs besides
You're
that.
right. Actually,
Besides,
now you bring that up, I'm going to back up a spec. So one thing and that another part of the movie that was really interesting to me and was neat was when Wyatt and them showed up at the train station. Um, and he met up with the brothers and their wives, and there was a scene where they were walking and they seen a stained glass window, and so they stopped and looked because it looked like a mirror, and that was really a really cool scene just to see them all stand like that. That was really cool. Yeah,
I believe that is a recreation of a photo that actually occurred. I
that's pretty
believe it
neat.
was,
Yeah, yeah,
which is
that
why
was
they
nice.
did that.
Yeah,
Like, yeah,
yeah, that was cool. I like that.
yeah. The next scene is Virgil deciding to take the law into his own hands, and by like that's how I'm going to phrase it. But he actually becomes the replacement town marshal, replacing Fred White, and he decides to do it because like there wasn't really law before, but in the absence of Fred's stability, the town gets worse, and there's an unknown amount of time that passes between Fred White's death and Virgil taking up the mantle of Marshall. The movie kind of looks like it takes place tomorrow, but it probably was months. But Virgil passes an ordinance that prevents carrying a gun in town.
Correct.
Um, like it has to be checked. Like you come into town, you check it someplace, and then you take it whenever you're leaving, which is was unconstitutional then. It's unconstitutional now, but they could get away with it because Arizona was a territory, not a state. And there was no other law enforcement that was going to say anything otherwise. But that starts setting the stage for the Cowboys and the Earps clashing over this ordinance that they made up. Um,
Correct, because the Cowboys ran the town because they didn't have any law. They were the law. They Fred White had mentioned to Wyatt Earp when they first got there that the Cowboys ran the town. If you see someone with that red sash on, they're a cowboy, so they ran the town. There wasn't any law in the town. So yeah, so Virgil Earp, which was Wyatt's older son, I believe, older brother, I believe, and then Morgan was the younger brother. But yeah, it was beginning of a mess, beginning of the mess. It really was.
Virgil gets into an altercation with Ike Clanton, who is he's not the second in command of the Cowboys because that's Johnny, but he's like we call him, I guess you can call him a deputy, a lieutenant underneath Curly Bill, and he's in the Oriental talking trash about the Earps and after he collects his gun, like the Cowboys are actually following the ordinance. He collects his guns from Milton the bartender, and smacks Milt. Says if I see the Earps, and he cocks his gun like they're gonna he's gonna shoot him. And Virgil pistol whips him and takes him to jail. And the Cowboys, when they pick him up in the morning, they demand his guns. It's like no, he's got to go. He's got to sober up first. And the Cowboys threaten him like it's going down today, and this leads to the OK Corral.
Right, right. One thing that I wanted to add to that is that the reason that he got so pissed off in the Oriental that night was he was gambling at the table with Doc Holliday. And Doc Holliday was sitting there gambling, and of course Kate was with behind him and stuff, and he was getting sick, he was coughing, because he had tuberculosis. And so in this scene he got really, really sick and he fell to the ground. And right before that, I'm sorry, right before that, he won a hand against Ike, and Ike was saying he was a cheater. Ike asked the bartender, um, what's going on? What's wrong with him? And saying he was sick, and he goes, well, I hope he dies. And that's when all that happened, where he got hit in the head and stuff. So I kind of
Mm-hmm.
want to add that. But so yeah, so Doc was getting pretty sick, and a doctor met with him and pretty much said to him, you need to stop your gambling and your, stuff with your woman and this, that, and the other, the smoking, all this stuff. And Doc wasn't having it. Pretty much told the doctor to, get out of my sight. Um, and of course, his girl, she was listening, but she, went up to him and was handing him a cigarette and all this stuff. She didn't want him to, have her leave. So,
which of
yeah,
course he does have her leave later on.
yeah. They don't actually show it though. They don't
Mm-hmm.
actually show it though. But yeah, but Doc was getting sicker and sicker. And but you're right, that started leading to the OK Corral. Because after that, what happened after that? Do you remember? I do.
No, go ahead.
Um, so since they got all upset that they got on their horses, but they were going to get on their horses. The couple of the guys came and got Ike out of the jail. They wanted his guns, and they said no, not till he sobers up. Well, the one guy goes to leave, and as he goes to leave, Wyatt Earp is walking up, and they pass each other, but they shouldered each other. It was an accident. And um, Wyatt said he said, "Oh, sorry." No, the guy, you said something nasty to him, and he says, "Oh, sorry, boy," or something. I'm not your boy, or whatever. And so, I'll fight you right now, he says. And so, as fast as you could blink, Wyatt had grabbed his gun, out of his own, holster and hit him on the head with it, and he fell to the ground. Well, after that, then they were really mad, and then so they all got on their horses, and Ike says, uh, it's time, we're coming to get you, kind of thing. They all rode off, and it's like, oh no. So because before that, I think we actually before that, when Wyatt found out that his brother Virgil became a sheriff, was it sheriff or marshal? I get those two
Marshall.
confused. Marshal. He was not happy. He's like, "What are you doing?" And he realized his younger brother Morgan followed in his suit, so they both were. And he's like, "What are you doing to me?" And they're like, "No, it's not about you." But the funny thing about this movie is that they're all excited and thanking him for going to Tombstone. Oh, thank you. If it wasn't for you, but then when things started hitting the fan, then all of a sudden it's all his fault. That's what That's how it was. So
Even though they're the ones that made the decisions to get there,
exactly,
and
they wouldn't
Wyatt's the
listen
whole
to
time they're like,
him.
no, 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 no.
Right. They wouldn't listen to him at all. So he looks at him and says, I guess you better, when they rode off and said, we're coming for you, he's like, I guess you better swear me in.
Mm-hmm.
So they did.
Doc shows up, despite the fact that he's supposed to be in hospital, and uh, this is, as I mentioned earlier, when the showing of his friendship, he's like, Doc, this doesn't concern you. He's like, that's a hell of a thing for you to say to me.
Yeah, it was actually, he really hurt his feelings, and it kind of touched it oh, that in your heart, because it's like, dude, I'm here to back you up, and how dare you say that to me? What do you mean it's not, I'm not involved, they're coming for us, he says, that, yeah, it made it kind of sad, because he really was his buddy, he really looked up to Wyatt. They were like, so the next thing that happened was Wyatt looked at him, and he just like, okay, well, you give Doc the rifle. I guess they thought if he had a rifle, they wouldn't, it might be better because they knew he was good with his guns. And
Mm-hmm.
so he took the rifle, and they went walking down the street to go to the OK Corral to take the guns away from the cowboys. Uh that was probably one of the most amazing scenes I've ever seen, watching them walk down the street to the OK Corral. It was the music, the background with the fire, the things they were wearing with the long jackets. I mean, it was just like amazing. It was amazing.
I have no idea how they wore those in Arizona. It's so hot.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
looks pretty cool though. Like that's kind of the image we have in our mind whenever we think of like a cool cowboy. Is
Yeah.
someone
It
wearing
was
basically a duster and
it was
wide brimmed
amazing.
cowboy hat. Yeah.
Yep, it was
Uh,
amazing.
the shootout is complicated, difficult to explain, and like audibly or even probably textually. But the short version is that Ike, who was the instigator in all this mess, was unarmed and did still participated in the movie, but was unarmed, participated in the fight, but escapes anyways. Gets 4 or 5 of his buddies shot, and uh, Morgan gets shot in the arm, and Virgil gets shot in the leg.
Yep. I think
Uh,
that I'm sorry, go ahead. I
Oh,
was
go
gonna
ahead.
say, I think one of the most amazing thing of that scene, I thought, in my opinion, was they're showing them standing, four across, and then other guys were all across, and they're all looking at each other. And of course, they make the scene real slow for effects and everything, but it showed each guy looking at each other, and it showed a part where Doc Holliday looked at one of the cowboys and he winked. And when he winked, then Wyatt's like, "Oh no!" And he even says it in slow motion. It shows it. It was really cool. Like I said, for the effects. And then they started shooting and stuff.
It
And
was Billy,
yeah,
and his face changed, and
yeah,
the face change went from like nervousness to I'm gonna do this.
yeah, yeah,
And that's why you can see when someone's about to draw.
yeah. So the women end up showing up, and each one went to each gentleman except for Wyatt's wife showed up. But then when she showed up, she seen Josephine in the distance looking at Wyatt, and they kind of did eye to eye. So then she got mad and turned around and walked away. So then that's another really good part of the movie, good scenes to watch, was watching Wyatt Earp and Doc Holliday walk together away from the OK Corral, walk together with the music, the everything. It was really, really something to watch. It was so good. Um,
Untouched from the battle,
it
despite the
was
fact that they were
so
standing in
good.
the open.
Yeah. And it showed that friendship. They're still together.
Hmm.
So that was really cool.
After the fallout from the OK Corral, the Cowboys want revenge, and they make assassination attempts on Morgan, Virgil, and their women. Now the women are warned because Josephine overheard something and shows up, and then Virgil is shot somewhere in the arm shoulder section. He ends up losing the use of his arm permanently, even in real including in real life. But he still continues to be a peace officer despite only having one arm. And Morgan is shot in the back, and he passes away. Now, in the after dealing, we mentioned earlier that everyone blames Wyatt. Well, this is where they blame Wyatt for their decisions.
Correct.
Um, and Wyatt decides that they're going to leave. And so Wyatt, the ladies, and Virgil, and the body of Morgan leave town. They have a brief interaction with the Cowboys where, it's like, I want you to know it's over. Curly Bill kind of just like, well, bye. And then there's, a smart remark from uh, Johnny Ringo, and they leave. They leave and go to the train station. And as they're leaving, Curly Bill tells Ike, "Go finish it." And uh, instead of making a successful assassination attempt on uh, Wyatt and Virgil, instead Wyatt's waiting behind them with a federal marshal's badge and blows Ike's counterpart away, and threatens him specifically with the line, "You tell him I'm coming, and hell's coming with me," which was an allusion to that revelation speech at the beginning of the movie.
Yeah, one of the things about this movie, they have a lot of good phrases. A lot of good phrases. Doc has a lot of good phrases.
You're
It's
a daisy if you do.
yeah, he has a lot of good phrases. So so at this point, I believe Wyatt and Doc Holliday, they go on a vengeance. He's on a vengeance. He's gonna go after anybody that has that red sash. And they do. And it shows them going across the country, just find anybody with red sash. So you see some guys, riding the horses and they just throw the sash off. So they pretty much did that. And then it gets to the point where they come to this little lake, I believe it, river,
It's a river, it's a small
little
river,
river. And I guess it's a well-known thing that really happened where Wyatt Earp and Doc Holliday and the other two gentlemen that came along with them that left the gang, cowboy gang, because of what they had done to the women. Um, they were having they were kind of in a crossfire where they were surrounded, and at this point, Wyatt's just like he's just wanting to get vengeance so bad that he literally goes walking in the water, and across from him comes Curly Bill, and it shows them, coming at each other, and he ends up blowing him away. Um, at that time, Doc's laying over there, laying on. After that happened, it shows, Wyatt standing by the water, just kind of like thinking or whatever. And it shows Doc Holliday laying down, like resting, and the other guys are doing stuff. And they're asking, Doc, what are you doing here? Because he's coughing. He's so sick, with his tuberculosis. Because what are you doing here? And he goes, well, Wyatt's my friend, He's the way he says it. So cool. I love his voice. And
Hmm.
and he says to him, well, I have a lot of friends. He goes, I don't. And it's just like, once again, it just shows you the friendship. The friendship thing was just amazing in this movie. So that was really interesting. So after this, they're riding, shows them riding, and it shows Doc getting sicker and sicker. Excuse me, getting sicker and sicker. Sicker. He's actually
Cold water.
coughing up blood and everything else. So they proceed to stop and go. They go and find this rancher, which ended up being a very popular actor, which was
Charlton Heston.
Charlton Heston, and he was the owner of the ranch. And so they stopped there, and Wyatt asked, we said we have a sick man here, and he's, can we stop? And so they stopped there, got him, a bed and everything, and then they took care of the horses and everything. And there was a conversation between Doc and Wyatt, because Johnny Ringo had sent one of his goons, or whatever you want to call him, to tell him that he wants to meet under this tree over in a certain area, that he wanted to meet Wyatt Earp, which is really interesting because, once again, it's going after Wyatt. Wyatt, everybody's after, it's always everything's Wyatt's problem.
He is the
So
leader.
yeah, so he's sitting there as Doc, sick, coughing, looks horrible. And he says, asks Doc, as he's sitting on the side of the bed, he says, he says, I can't win, can I? And Doc says, no, you can't, tells him, no, he can't win against Johnny Ringo, because Johnny Ringo is known to be a pistolier really good. So Doc starts coughing, and he says, how's it feel? And he's to wear one of those. And he's talking about the badge he had on him. And so he convinces him to, give him the badge, because Wyatt believes he's sick and dying, so he gives him the badge. He thinks of it being his friend and always being there for him. And he rides off, and what happens next? What's the next thing that happens?
The next thing that happens is a bit of historical fiction. It Wyatt rides into, rides up to the area where they're supposed to have this duel. Meets up with a couple of the cowboys. Now he's got, a couple of guys with him as well, but he's like, yeah, he's a little further down. He's waiting for you. He kind of warns Wyatt warns his two guys. It's like, look, as soon as it doesn't matter what's going to happen, they're not going to give you safe cab passage out. Get clear. And Then the scene transitions to Johnny Ringo waiting for Wyatt, and up walks a figure wearing a marshal's badge and wearing the same coat and the hat, and uh, it turns out to be Doc Holliday doing a whole litany of like his best lines in the movie. And he reminds Johnny Ringo that they began a fight that they never got to finish. First in the bar, then in the town, now here. This time, it's legal.
Amazing, amazing, phrases. And then have the duel, and then, and he ends up being
Grandmother.
at right, and he ends up being laying at the base of a tree. And then shortly after that, you see Wyatt Earp coming over, running, and he realizes, like, like, what the heck?
So you're
What's
supposed to be
going
laying in
on?
bed. What are you doing here?
What's going on? And he says, I wasn't as sick as I, pretended,
One of the
Um,
six I made out.
yeah. And what was the phrase that he said when he leaned down and he noticed that he had the badge on? He put it on him.
It's like, oh, I'm afraid the strain was more than he could bear.
Right, right, right. So all the cool phrases. You definitely have to watch the movie if you haven't seen it because the phrases are just amazing. I mean, Val Kilmer is an amazing actor, and actually Wyatt Earp, played by um, Kurt Russell was. I mean, I think this is one of Kurt Russell's best movies. I believe, in my opinion. I could watch it over and over because it's really good, and I'll fast forward the part, with the horse and everything, because that's just a little much. It's a little much. They like I said, they could have left that out or left part of it out. But after that scene, so
They finished their
remember,
rampage.
pardon me,
They finished their rampage.
they do finish the rampage. Exactly, they finish the rampage, and then in the middle of that, they had stopped. I'm not sure where they were. They were somewhere like getting their horses water and stuff like that. And while they were there, the stagecoach rolled up, and um, Josephine came out of it, and so he ran into her, and they kind of had a little conversation there, and you know. It's like she wanted him to say something, but he didn't really say it. And then she ended up having to leave. At one point, there was a point in the movie where the cowboys they actually did shoot her companion. So it goes from that after they do the rampage, they get, I guess everyone they think they found with the red sash. And
Other
then
than Ike, who runs away again. He bravely ran away.
right, right, but haven't, they end up catching up with them later in life. And one of the saddest parts of the movie for me was watching Doc Holliday laying he was laying in a bed and it was in a hospital. And it was interesting because they had him laying there and his feet were sticking out of the blanket. I find that really odd. So they had his feet sticking out there. And it showed Wyatt coming in and he would go, it was showing that he would come and visit him. And he said, and when he showed up this one time, he's pretty much asking him not to, to not be there, that he's dying, he says, And so Wyatt's trying to play cards with him. He takes his cards and he hands him his cards. Oh, you won again, poker and stuff. And Wyatt actually wrote a book and he gave it to him and he put it on his chest and gave it to him. But in the scene, Doc Holliday explained, he was in love when he was younger and explained that situation and how, the girl became a nun because of him being with her and stuff. And I think it was like his second cousin or something like that. But anyway, so he asked uh Wyatt to, if you ever care about me, please leave now and stuff. So Wyatt does uh do what he asked and thanks him, and I'm gonna get upset. Anyways, says his goodbyes and he leaves. And then shortly after that, you see Doc Holliday looking at the book, and it says it had, written Doc Holliday by Wyatt Earp or something in that regard.
To my
And
friend Doc Holliday.
what, yeah. And then he passes after that. So to me, that was a real sad scene. And um, yeah. But he did in that scene as well. He did tell Wyatt, go find that girl and go get her. Um, and then yeah, that's what he did. That's what he did. He listened to
From the
Doc.
listens to Doc, goes and finds Josephine in California somewhere, not California, excuse me, Colorado, and takes her dancing in the snow, which is something she asked him for when they first met. The movie's really good about introducing something kind of innocuous early in the movie and then paying it forward sometimes way later, like her asking for a dance at the very beginning and then him ending the movie ending with them actually getting their first dance.
Yeah. It was when he did show up and to where Josephine was, he says, I have nothing to offer you, no, no money, nothing. And her response was, don't worry, Wyatt. My family's rich. So, and they were together. for they were together for a long, long time, long, and they
Mhm.
both been passed away in California. Like, um, but okay, so I would like to talk about who is your favorite character of this movie. I'm gonna tell you who mine is, and you can tell me who yours is.
Go ahead.
And then we'll go ahead and mention who our least favorite fit character is, if any, if there is any. Um, I would, Doc Holliday's always been my favorite character. I love everything about his character. I think that he played an amazing Doc Holliday. Val Kilmer played an amazing Doc Holliday. Um, it was so realistic, and so I'm gonna have to go with Doc Holliday. Yeah.
He was my favorite character introduction. He's probably my favorite character. I like Wyatt a lot, but I think that's largely due to Kurt Russell's just bluff, strong face and that amazing handlebar mustache that he had going on. Um, yeah, Doc, hands down, probably it's got to be Doc.
Yeah.
And my least favorite is bloody Ike Clanton. I cannot stand that guy.
Oh, and you know what? I agree with you. I think Ike was probably my least favorite. Well, now least favorite w- in regards to he was a bad
Portrayal.
guy. The portrayal was really good.
Ike is he's a brute that
Well,
has
yeah. Yeah.
he's a brute and he's I'm going to say he's disgusting. He's a brute. He's disgusting. He's dumb by comparison to the others, and that's like he's easy to hate.
There's so many times if they would have done something to him, like, you know,
Mm.
then a lot of things would have been differently. So different, I agree. But I would
Hurt
also have
that
to
guy,
say,
and half the problems are gone.
right, and I would have to say my second favorite. So it was almost a tie and for me, it would be Johnny Ringo because oh my gosh, he is an amazing actor. So
Michael
it's
Caine does
like
a great job.
it's close. So Doc Holliday, but man, Johnny Ringo's right there. I mean, it's like almost a tie because they're both such good actors. And honestly,
Mm.
it's funny because you can't like say anything negative about Kurt Russell because he did such an amazing job as Wyatt Earp. So I just like the movie, so I really do.
So you asked a question at the beginning: is Tombstone highly overrated? What's your answer?
Well, my answer is no, it is not highly overrated. I think Tombstone is an amazing movie, as I've mentioned before. So, no, I wouldn't say it's overrated, and it's definitely not highly overrated. What about you?
Oh, I agree. It's not overrated. I'd give it a good solid, probably an A minus. Um, it's got a pretty good cinematography. I really don't remember the score throughout most of the movie, even though we've seen it a whole lot. So like the score is going to take it down a little bit. The acting is perfect though. Like you could not get better acting out of the cast members that were chosen for this movie, and the story solid.
Okay, so you gave it an A plus, you said?
A minus.
A minus. Okay, I'm actually going to give it an A plus because I absolutely love this movie. It's one of my favorites. I watch it often, and I just love almost every actor in it. So mine is an A plus. Okay, guys, we're gonna leave it at that. And this is an unintelligent movie reviews. So thank you for watching, and please leave us some comments. Let us know what other movies you'd like to talk about. Come hang out with us, have some fun, and we'll see you next time. Thank you. Bye.